Rooted and rising family, let's take a deep breath. That always feels so fantastic. It really does. Let's ring the sound bowl. Great, fantastic. All right. So, rooted and rising, many of you already know Asha as the Mermaid Queen. You know her as the woman who would one day meet Evander, the Alpha King, a king whose strength was matched, or is matched, by his gentleness, whose love was rooted in honor instead of control. But every story has a beginning. Before there was Evander, there was another chapter. A chapter filled with hope, heartbreak, silence, and survival. This is the Empress he left behind. This is the story that comes before the Mermaid Queen and the Alpha King. As every queen has an origin story, every empress has a season when the crown feels impossibly heavy. And sometimes being left behind isn't the end of the story. It's the place where destiny quietly begins. Let's get started. Before Asha ever rose from the sea and saw the silver gray wolf running beneath the moon, there was another story. Before Evander, before the shoreline became a place of recognition instead of grief. Before the scent of vanilla, brown sugar, and honey called a true king toward her, there was a season of her life that almost convinced her that love was supposed to feel like abandonment, confusion, silence, and survival. This is that story. The story of the Empress before she remembered she was an empress. Asha was young when she first met Kalan, the Fire King. Not young in the sense of being powerless, because power had always lived in her. She had been born of sea, raised among pearls, tides, ancient songs, and courtly expectation. Even then, when she had not yet fully taken her throne, there was something unmistakable about her. She carried royalty in her posture and softness in her eyes. She was feminine, deeply intuitive, and already watched by spirits that moved through water like whispers. But youth has a way of making even powerful women believe that charm is the same as devotion. Asha had not yet learned that some kings wear crowns only to hide the emptiness behind them. The grand convergence was held in the celestial court, a place between realms where rulers came together beneath domes of crystal and starlight. The sea realm arrived in shimmering blues and silvers, their garments flowing like moving water. The storm realm came, ground and lightning and wind, led by Asha's sister Emerald, whose laughter could gather clouds when she was pleased and split the sky when she was angered. The Ember Courts entered in red, gold, and black, bringing heat into the chamber before anyone spoke a word. among them stood Kaelin. He was beautiful in the way fire is beautiful, dangerous, warm, impossible not to look at. His robes were lined with molten thread, and the crown at his brow looked less like jewelry and more like a flame frozen in metal. He moved through the banquet hall as if the world had always opened paths for him. Nobles leaned in when he spoke. Women watched him when he laughed. Men listened because he carried himself like someone who had never questioned his right to command a room. When Asha entered, his eyes found hers immediately. It was not subtle. The music continued. The court continued. Servants crossed the room with trays of sugared fruit, wine, sea-spiced delicacies, and fire-roasted offerings from the Ember realm. But for a moment, all Asha noticed was the way Kaelin watched her as if she were not merely one royal woman among many, but the reason the entire gathering had been called. She should have been careful. She should have remembered that fire often consumes what it admires. But she was young, and the attention of a powerful king can feel like fate when it first lands on you. He approached her before the first dance ended. "Princess Asha," he said, bowing just enough to appear respectful without ever making himself look small. "King Kaelin," she replied, studying him with the calm she had been trained to wear in every court. His smile deepened. "So you know me." "I know of you." "That is not the same thing." "No," she said, and the corner of her mouth lifted. "It is not." That pleased him. She could tell. He liked a woman who did not fall too easily, or at least he liked the challenge of making her fall. He asked her to dance, and Asha accepted because the room was watching, because refusing would have made a statement she had not intended to make, and because some part of her wanted to know what it would feel like to be held by fire. For the rest of that night, Kaelin was everything a king should have been. He was attentive, charming, intelligent, and warm. He asked questions about her realm and listened as if every answer mattered. He laughed when she teased him and grew serious when she spoke of responsibility. When he looked at her, he made her feel seen, not as an heir, not as a political figure, not as a jewel of the sea realm, but as a woman whose thoughts, laughter, and presence could stop him where he stood. That was the beginning of the illusion. In the days that followed, Kaelin sought her out often. He appeared in gardens where water floated in silver globes above stone fountains. He walked beside her along terraces overlooking constellations. He spoke of alliances, destiny, passion, and power. He told her that the sea and fire were not enemies, only forces that had not yet learned how to honor each other. Asha, who had been raised to believe that realms could grow stronger through wise connections, found beauty in that thought. She did not yet know that some men speak of merging worlds when they only mean entering yours long enough to take warmth from it. Their first private moment was not planned like a treaty or arranged like a royal negotiation. It happened beneath a sky crowded with stars, after music had faded and most of the court had withdrawn into their chambers. Kaelin found her near a moonlit pool where celestial fish moved beneath glass clear water. He said her name softly, and when she turned, there was no court between them. No advisors, no sisters, no watchful nobles measuring what the interaction might mean. Just Asha, Kaelin, night, and the dangerous softness of being wanted. He was gentle with her then. That was the part that would confuse her later. He was not cruel in the beginning. He did not come to her like a tyrant. He came like a man undone by desire and tenderness, like someone who believed he had found something rare. His hands were careful. His voice was low. He looked at her as if she were both ocean and altar, something he wanted to touch and worship at the same time. Asha believed him. In that moment, she believed every breath, every promise spoken without words, every heated glance that made her feel chosen. Beneath the stars, they came together in passion, drawn to one another with an intensity neither of them questioned. Kaelin held her close, completely captivated by her, as though nothing else existed beyond that moment. And then it happened. As passion reached its height, his eyes found hers. For a single heartbeat, everything seemed to stand still. He looked at her with an intensity she would never forget. A look that carried something deeper than desire, something deeper than passion. A look that settled into her spirit and rooted itself there. And in that moment, Asha knew. Not what, not how, only that something had changed. Something had begun. The certainty struck her so suddenly that it stole her breath. Her hand instinctively moved against him as she held his gaze. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. The moment passed, but the knowing remained. And years later, Asha would still remember that look. After the convergence ended, the realms separated again. Kaelin returned to the Ember Court, and Asha returned to the Sea Realm with memory she had closely held and questions she did not know how to ask. At first, everything seemed normal enough. She attended council meetings, she walked through coral halls, she visited Emerald in the Storm Realm and laughed when her sister teased her about being quieter than usual. But little things began to change. The sea maids who dressed her noticed she grew tired earlier than before. Her appetite shifted. Certain scents turned her stomach. She found herself placing her hands over her belly without thinking, especially when alone. Emerald noticed too, though she did not press at first. "You are glowing," Emerald said one afternoon as she stood on the balcony of Cloudstone in the Storm Realm. watching lightning crawl lazily through violet skies. Asha gave her a look. That is what people say when they want to imply something without saying it. Emerald smiled. And you're avoiding the implication. I am avoiding you being dramatic. I am never dramatic, Emerald said, just as thunder rolled behind her for emphasis. Asha laughed despite herself, but the laughter faded when her hand drifted again to her stomach. Emerald saw it. This time, she said nothing. She only reached over and touched her sister's hand, and for a moment the air between them grew very still. The answer came in a dream. Asha had fallen asleep in her chamber beneath the sea, where curtains moved like soft tides and moonlight filtered down through layers of water until the entire room glowed blue. She dreamed she stood in a place beyond the realms, somewhere vast and dark and filled with stars. There was no floor beneath her feet, but she did not fall. In the distance, light gathered. It came closer slowly, taking shape until she saw a white horse moving through the heavens. The horse was not running, it was flying. Its mane streamed behind it like a comet, and its hooves never touched ground. Upon its back rode a man dressed entirely in white. His face was calm, ancient, and kind in a way that made Asha's heart ache before he even spoke. He circled her once, the horse moving around her in a wide, luminous arc, and then he stopped before her. In his arms, wrapped in light, was a child. The rider looked at Asha and said, "Here is your baby." Asha woke with a gasp. Both hands flew to her stomach. The room was silent except for the low pulse of the sea beyond her windows. No healer had confirmed it. No oracle had spoken it out loud. No council had been called. Yet Asha knew. She knew with the certainty of tides, with the certainty of the moon pulling water from shore to shore. There was life inside her. For a moment, fear and wonder existed together in the same breath. She was not ready. She was not married. The realms had not prepared for this. Kaylin had not prepared for this. But beneath all of that was something deeper, something warm and undeniable. A child. Her child. A life that had come through her, whether the world was ready or not. She sent word to Kaylin. The answer did not come quickly. At first, she told herself the delay meant nothing. Fire courts were busy. Kings had duties. Messages crossed realms slowly. But the silence stretched. One day became 3, 3 became 7. When his reply finally arrived, it was not warm. It was not tender. It did not carry the voice of the man who had looked at her beneath the starlight as though she were everything. It was brief. He wanted to speak in person. Asha traveled to the border between the realms, wearing dignity like armor. She told herself he was only overwhelmed. She told herself he would soften when he saw her, she told herself that the man from the night had been real. Kaylin was waiting in a hall of black stone veined with fire. He looked as beautiful as ever, but there was something colder in him now. Not visibly cruel, not at first, just distant, guarded, already preparing to deny what he did not want to carry. "I am with child," Asha said. The words echoed between them. Kaylin's face changed. It was small, but she saw it. Surprise first, then irritation, then calculation. "How certain are you?" Asha stared at him. "Certain?" His jaw tightened. "And you are certain it is mine?" The question struck harder than a shout would have. For a moment, Asha could not speak. She had prepared for fear. She had prepared for worry. She had even prepared for anger. She had not prepared for insult. "You know it is," she said quietly. "I know what you claim." Something inside her recoiled. "What I claim?" Kaylin turned away from her as if her pain inconvenienced him. "I have responsibilities, Asha. I already have heirs nearing adulthood. I have no desire to begin again. Not now. Not under circumstances like this." "Circumstances like what?" His eyes returned to hers. "Uncertain ones." The silence that followed was no longer empty. It was full of the breaking of something. Asha placed one hand over her belly, protective before she even fully understood the instinct. "There is nothing uncertain about this child." "There is if I say there is." And there he was. Not the warm king, not the attentive man, not the flame that had made her feel chosen. The tyrant beneath the crown had lifted his head, and Asha saw him for the first time. He did not ask how she felt. He did not ask what she needed. He did not offer protection, partnership, or even kindness. He spoke of reputation, timing, existing obligations, and what people might think. Then, when she did not bend beneath the weight of his words, he turned crueler. He accused her of trying to trap him, of wanting access to his realm, of using the child as leverage. He spoke as though she were a liar, as though her body were a scheme, as though the life inside her were an inconvenience he could reject by refusing to name it. Asha returned to the sea realm with her head high and her heart in pieces. That was when the silence began. Not clean silence. Not the silence of an ending that allows grief to breathe. Kaylin's silence was a weapon. He would disappear when she needed answers and reappear when he wanted control. He would ignore her messages, then send word through others that she was unstable, dramatic, or untrustworthy. He refused responsibility while still acting as though he had rights over her life. He did not want her, but he did not want her free. As her pregnancy grew, so did the distance between them. Asha heard rumors before she heard truth. Kaylin had seen and been with another woman, and then another. Then one in particular began appearing beside him often enough that whispers gave her shape. She was not royal, but she had made herself comfortable in his world. She had children of her own. Children Kaylin seemed willing to feed, house, protect, and claim in every way except blood. That knowledge did something to Asha that betrayal alone had not. It made the wound specific. He had said he did not want more children. But what he meant was that he did not want hers. He had said the timing was wrong, but he found time for another woman's household. He had said responsibility was complicated, but he carried responsibility willingly when it allowed him to look noble elsewhere. Asha bore her child under a sky heavy with storm. The sea was restless that night, crashing against the palace walls with such force that even the healers exchanged uneasy glances. The labor began before sunset. By midnight, it had become clear that something was wrong. The birth was difficult, far more difficult than anyone expected. Pain came in relentless waves, each one stronger than the last, leaving Asha exhausted and struggling to remain conscious. Her parents appeared briefly. They did not stay. Emerald was absent, delayed by matters within the storm realm that prevented her from reaching the sea realm in time. And Kaylin never came at all. Not a message. Not a representative. Not even an inquiry. Only silence. The hours dragged on. The healers became increasingly concerned. What should have been a straightforward delivery turned dangerous. At one point, Asha heard one healer quietly ask another whether they could save both mother and child. Neither answered immediately. For the first time, real fear entered the room. Asha drifted in and out of awareness as the labor continued. The pain was overwhelming, the exhaustion worse. More than once, she felt herself slipping somewhere distant, somewhere cold and quiet, as though the sea itself was trying to pull her beneath its surface. Still she fought, not for herself, for the child she carried, for the life depending on her. When dawn finally approached, every remaining ounce of strength inside her was gone. And yet somehow she found more. With one final effort, she brought her son into the world. His cry filled the chamber, strong, alive, beautiful. Relief swept through the room so quickly that several healers openly wept. Asha barely heard them. Asha was too weak, too exhausted, too close to the edge she had almost crossed. When her son was finally placed against her chest, tears slipped down her face. Not because the pain was over, not because the future would be easy, but because after everything, he was here. And she was still alive to hold him. Hours later, Emerald finally arrived. The moment she saw her sister and nephew alive, relief overtook every other emotion. She crossed the room immediately and took Asha's hand. Neither of them spoke. Nothing needed to be said. Outside, the storm finally began to break. Inside, mother and child remain. Scared, exhausted, alive. And neither of them knew yet how hard won that victory had been. Asha's standing within the palace shifted in ways no one said plainly at first. Some pitied her, some judged her, and others whispered that she should have known better than to trust a fire king without a formal bond. Some avoided her because standing too close to her meant standing against Kaelin's version of events. Though she was royal by blood, grief has a way of making even a palace feel like exile. She found herself wandering halls that had once felt like home, and feeling as though she had become a ghost inside them. Time moved forward. Even when grief made it feel like she was standing still, her son grew from a newborn carried against her chest into a little boy with curious eyes, quick hands, and a laugh that could pull Asha back into herself on days when the weight of carrying everything nearly buried her. He learned to walk along the palace corridors that felt too cold for them both. He learned to reach for her face when she cried quietly, learned to call for her from the nursery, learned to sleep with one hand curled around her finger, as if he knew even then that they had survived something together. Eventually, she left for a time. Not because she was weak, because staying somewhere where everyone watched her pain had become its own kind of prison. She traveled first to Emerald's realm, where wind moved through open towers and storms gathered around mountain peaks like loyal beasts. Emerald did not ask her to explain everything. She did not demand strength from her. She simply opened the gates. In the storm realm, Asha rested. She learned how to breathe without waiting for a message from Kaelin. She learned how to raise her son with thunder outside the windows and her sister nearby, silent and protective. She learned that grief comes in waves, and sometimes the only way through is to stop pretending you are not drowning. Still, Kaelin's reach followed her. Even when absent, he controlled through rumor. He made people cautious about helping her. He implied that closeness to Asha meant disloyalty to him. He watched from afar through shape-shifted messengers, through flames that carried visions, through servants who reported more than they should have. Sometimes Asha felt him before she knew he was there. A heat at the edge of her awareness. A pressure like someone standing too close behind her. He would not claim her, but he would not release her. As years passed, the pattern became clear. Kaelin had chosen another household, another woman, another life. He raised children that were not his while denying the one who was. He poured resources into another family while Asha struggled to rebuild stability for herself and her son. Yet, whenever someone came too close to her, Kaelin's shadow appeared. A suitor would suddenly withdraw. An ally would become distant. A door would close without explanation. At first, Asha thought she was imagining it. Then, she knew she was not. The control had never been about love. It had been about possession. He did not want to stand beside her, but he wanted the right to decide who could. He did not want to build with her, but he wanted to keep her from building with anyone else. He had left her outside the warmth of his kingdom, then acted offended when she began learning how to make fire of her own. The breaking point did not come in a dramatic battle. It came on an ordinary night. Asha sat alone after putting her son to sleep, looking out at water that should have comforted her but did not. She had spent years trying to understand Kaylin. Years trying to make sense of cruelty by searching for the wounded place it came from. Years holding on to pieces of a story that had never truly loved her back. That night, she realized understanding him would not free her. Choosing herself would. She rose before dawn and went to the oldest shore in her kingdom. The place where the sea was said to remember every oath ever spoken over it. She wore white. No crown, no jewels, nothing that marked her as anything but a woman standing before the water with a child asleep in the world behind her and a future waiting somewhere ahead. Emerald came without being called. So did her brother, who ruled a deeper fire than Kaylin's. Not the bright, courtly flame of the ember realm, but the ancient flame beneath the world, the underrealm's ember, the fire of roots, ash, endings, and rebirth. He was not a fire king in the way Kaylin was. His flame did not perform for courts or decorate crowns. It burned below the surface, where old things were consumed and transformed into power. He and Emerald stood at a distance, not interfering. This was Asha's work. She stepped into the tide. I return what was never love, she said. The sea pulled at her ankles. I release the silence used to punish me. I release the shame placed on my name. I release the fear that kept me tied to a man who only loved control. I release the lie that being chosen by him would have made me whole. The water rose. Wind gathered. Far beneath the earth, fire stirred in answer to her brother's presence. Asha closed her eyes and saw every thread between herself and Kaylin. Red, black, gold, tangled, burning in places, frozen in others. She saw where he had touched her spirit, where he had marked her confidence, where his rejection had become a question she kept asking herself. She saw all of it. Then she cut it. Not with rage, with authority. The sea surged so high it hid her from view. Emerald's wind circled the shore. Her brother's flame burned blue along the waterline without consuming a thing. When the wave finally lowered, Asha stood with tears on her face and peace in her chest. For the first time in years, the silence around her did not feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. That was the morning the tide turned. But freedom still had one final test. It came not long after the ritual, on a day when the realm was quiet and Asha had begun to believe that perhaps Kaylin's shadow had finally thinned. She was walking through one of the outer markets with her son nearby, choosing fruit from a vendor who had known her since childhood, when she felt that familiar heat at the edge of her awareness. Not warmth, not comfort, surveillance. Her body stilled. Across the market, a man she did not recognize stood too long near a stall of red silk. His face was unfamiliar, but his attention was not. His posture was too careful. His gaze moved away too quickly. And beneath the stranger's borrowed shape, Asha felt the ember of Kalen's presence. The old version of her might have pretended not to notice. She might have gone home and questioned herself for hours, wondering whether she was imagining things. But that woman was gone. Asha handed the fruit back to the vendor and crossed the market. The stranger turned to leave. "Do not run from me wearing another face," she said. The market quieted. The man stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the borrowed face flickered like heat over stone. The illusion did not fall fully, but enough of Kalen showed through for Asha to see him. His mouth tightened. "You always did make things so dramatic." "No," she said. "I used to make everything smaller so you would not have to answer for it." His eyes flashed. "You think you can cut a few cords in the water and suddenly none of this touches me?" Asa's gaze narrowed. "You felt it." Kalen's silence answered. The ritual had reached him. The severing had not only freed her, it had removed access he had grown accustomed to having. He could no longer see clearly, could no longer reach as easily, could no longer slide into the edges of her life without resistance. And now, stripped of that hidden control, he was angry. "My kingdom is falling apart," he said, voice low and sharp. "Ever since you turned your back, everything has gone wrong." Asha stared at him. Then she laughed once, not from humor, but disbelief. "You cannot be serious. You cursed me." "No, Kalen, you chose poorly." His face hardened. "You chose her. You chose that household. You chose to pour yourself into children that were not yours while denying the one that was. You chose silence. You chose lies. You chose to shame me because the truth required more courage than you had. You chose to watch me instead of love me. Now your choices have ripened, and you want to blame me for the harvest." Something in him twisted, ugly and exposed. "You think you are innocent?" "I think I'm finished." The words were quiet, but the force behind them made even the air seem to pause. Kalen stepped closer. "You do not get to erase me." Asha did not move. "I do not need to erase you. I survived you. That is enough." His gaze flickered toward her son, and in that instant the sea rose inside Asha, went cold. "Do not look at him," she said. Kalen's attention snapped back to her. "You lost the right to look at what you refuse to love." The final thread between them pulled tight. Asha felt it, thin and strained, the last stubborn remnant of a bond that had survived only because she had once hoped there was something worth saving. There was not. "No more messages," she said. "No more spies. No more borrowed faces. No more heat at the edge of my life. You will not watch me. You will not interfere with who comes near me. You will not whisper into rooms you were not invited to enter. Whatever you built, whatever is falling, whatever has left you empty, you will face it in the kingdom you chose." Kalen looked as though he wanted to answer, but no words came. Asha lifted one hand. Water rose from the market fountain beside her, not violently, but with absolute obedience. It curved around her wrist like a living bracelet. "The ritual opened the door," she said. "This closes it." The water flashed silver. Kalen staggered back as if something unseen had struck him in the chest. The illusion around him shattered completely for 1 second, showing his true face, furious, wounded, and afraid. Before he vanished in a burst of ember and smoke, the heat disappeared. The market breathed again. Asha stood still until she could no longer feel him anymore. Not watching, not reaching, not attached. Her son came to her side and slipped his small hand into hers. She looked down at him, and this time when she smiled, it came without pain. That was the day the silence became hers. That was the day the watching ended. Asha returned to the sea realm, not as the woman Kalen had discarded, but as the woman who had survived being discarded and found herself still royal, still powerful, still whole. Not long after, death moved through the old royal line. The throne that had always waited for her could wait no longer. Her parents passed beyond the veil of water, and ancestors' song in Asha, sole heir of the sea realm, was called home to rule. Grief met responsibility, but this time she did not crumble beneath either. Her coronation was unlike anything the realm had seen. The ocean itself rose to crown her. Pearls surfaced from the deep and arranged themselves into her regalia. Ancient sea creatures circled the palace in reverence. Emerald stood to one side, lightning woven through her hair. Her brother stood to the other, flame burning beneath his skin like a hidden sun. Asha's son watched from the front of the hall, old enough to understand that something sacred was happening. And when the crown touched her head, he smiled as if he had known all along who his mother was. Queen Asha did not inherit a perfect kingdom. She inherited debts, fractured alliances, neglected trade routes, old wounds, and nobles too comfortable with stagnation. But she had learned too much from survival to be intimidated by disorder. She rebuilt everything. She opened the eastern coral ports. She restored trade with the storm realm. She negotiated with the underrealm through her brother, bringing heat and mineral wealth into cities that had dimmed for generations. She expanded healing houses, protected mothers without partners, reformed inheritance laws, and made it known that no woman in her realm would be shamed for surviving what someone else had done to her. The kingdom changed because Asha had changed. Abundance returned. Music returned. Festivals returned. The palace filled again with laughter, movement, and color. The same people who had once whispered about her now spoke of her wisdom. The nobles who had doubted her learned quickly that softness did not make her easy to manipulate. She could sit in council wearing pearls and silk, speaking gently, and still cut through deception with a single sentence. Her power became a thing of legend. She commanded the sea, but that was only the beginning. Through love and blood and sacred alliance, she could call upon emeralds, winds, and lightning. Through her brother, she could draw flame from the underrealm. Through her own ancient line, she could move water, hear what others tried to hide beneath silence, and speak into the unseen places where truth lived. She did not steal power. She was trusted with it. That was the difference. Real power answered her because she knew how to honor it. And Kalen saw. Of course, he saw. His own kingdom had begun to wither. The woman he had chosen had drained his resources, twisted his loyalty, taken his protection, and left when the taking no longer served her. The children he had raised as proof of his nobility scattered into lives that did not honor him. His court, once bright with flame, grew dimmer. Trade weakened. Advisors questioned him. His charm no longer hid the cracks. So he looked back toward the sea, toward Asha, toward the woman he had left behind. He sent his first message wrapped in apology. Asha did not answer. He sent another, warmer, then another, sorrowful, then one filled with memory, as if nostalgia could rewrite history. When she finally agreed to meet him, it was not at the shore where they had once stood as almost lovers. It was in her throne room, before her court, beneath arches of pearl and moonstone, where the sea moved visibly behind her in great glass walls. Kaelin entered wearing gold. Asha wore silver. He bowed. She did not rise. For a moment, he looked almost like a man from the beginning. Handsome, wounded, familiar enough to be dangerous if she had not already burned the bridge inside herself. Asha, he said softly. King Kaelin. The formality struck him. She saw it. I hoped we might speak privately. You gave up the privilege of private access to me long ago. His jaw shifted, but he recovered. I made mistakes. Yes. I was afraid. Yes. I should have been there. Yes. The simplicity of her answers unsettled him more than the anger would have. He stepped closer. I thought of you often. Asha's eyes did not soften. Thinking of me did not feed my child. It did not protect my name. It did not stop you from building a life in another woman's house while your own blood went without. Pain crossed his face, though whether it was guilt or discomfort, she no longer cared to determine. I was wrong. You were. I want to make it right. At that, Asha finally stood. The entire room seemed to still around her. You cannot make it right by wanting access to what survived you. Kaelin swallowed. I never stopped caring. No, she said. You never stopped watching. There is a difference. His expression tightened. Asha descended the steps of her throne slowly, not to come closer, but to make sure every word landed without distance softening it. You made your choice. You chose silence. You chose denial. You chose another woman's household while rejecting the child created from your own body. You chose to let me be called a liar, unstable, unworthy, and still believe you have the right to control who came near me. You chose all that. Kaelin's eyes lowered. The spirit spoke once of what you could have been, Asha continued. You were meant to stand beside me. You were meant to be husband, protector, father, and king in truth. But destiny offers doors. It does not drag cowards through them. The word struck him like a blade. Asha stopped before him. You left an empress behind and thought she would remain where you abandoned her. For the first time, Kaelin had no answer. The throne is no longer open to you. My heart is no longer waiting. My son is not a door which through you may return. Whatever you lost by choice. His voice dropped. Then there's nothing? Asha looked at him with the calm of a woman who had already grieved him. There is consequence. Kaelin left the sea realm with nothing but the truth, and Asha did not watch him go. That evening, after court ended and the palace quieted, Asha walked alone through the gardens that overlooked the upper sea. She expected to feel sadness, but what came instead was stillness, the kind that arrives when a long war finally ends. Her son was safe. Her kingdom was thriving. Her power had returned to her multiplied. The woman who had once begged for clarity no longer needed explanations from anyone who had benefited from her confusion. For the first time in many years, Asha felt something unfamiliar moving through her. Not grief, not longing, curiosity. Something had been calling her toward the surface for days. A pull she could not explain. At first, she ignored it. There was too much to do, too many councils, too many reforms, too many duties. But the call continued, soft and persistent, like a song heard through water. That night, she followed it. She rose through the sea slowly, leaving behind palace lights, coral towers, and the watchful eyes of spirits who had always known more than they said. The closer she came to the surface, the stronger the pull became. Not urgent, not demanding, simply present, waiting. When her head broke through the water, the moon was high. The shoreline stretched before her, silver and quiet. And there, running along the sand, was a wolf, a massive, silver-gray wolf. He moved like freedom itself, powerful, controlled, wild without being reckless. His paw struck the sand in a steady rhythm, and the moonlight caught in his fur until he looked almost made of starlight. Asha watched him from the water, unseen, one hand resting against a smooth black rock as something in her chest stirred. She did not know his name. She did not know his kingdom. She did not know that he, too, would one day know her by scent before sight. All she knew was that for the first time in a long time, watching someone did not hurt. It awakened something. So she returned. Not every night at first, but often enough that the shoreline became familiar in a new way. Some evenings, the silver-gray wolf ran alone along the water's edge, powerful and untamed beneath the moon. Other evenings, he came in the form of a man, walking the sand with the weight of a kingdom in his shoulders and solitude in his silence. Asha observed from beneath the tide, hidden by shadow and foam, telling herself she was only curious. But curiosity, when fed, becomes something else. Over time, she learned the rhythm of him. She learned when he came to clear his mind, when he ran to exhaust the weight of duty from his body, when he stood at the edge of the sea as if listening for something he could not name. She watched without interrupting, not because she was afraid, but because she had learned the value of moving slowly. She no longer mistook attraction for destiny. She no longer mistook interest for safety. If something was calling her, she would listen, but she would not rush toward it blindly. Then, one night, he stopped. The wolf had been running hard along the shoreline, silver fur bright beneath the moon, when he suddenly slowed, his head lifted, his ears turned toward the sea. Asha stilled beneath the surface, only her eyes above water. He turned directly toward her. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the wolf shifted. Where Silver Fur had been, a man now stood at the edge of the shore. Broad shoulders, beneath the moon, his presence steady in a way that did not demand attention because it already had it. He stepped toward the water, not carelessly, not arrogantly, but as if answering the same call that had brought her there night after night. "If you are going to keep watching me," he said, voice low enough to belong to the dark, "you might as well come closer." Asha rose a little higher from the sea. Moonlight touched her face. Her crown, the water jeweled along her skin. She should have been embarrassed to be caught. Instead, amusement moved through her first. "I wasn't aware that I wasn't being subtle," she replied. His mouth curved slightly. No demand, no possession, no accusation. Only recognition. He extended his hand. "Evander," he said. Asha looked at his hand, then at his face. After everything she had survived, she knew better than to mistake a beginning for a promise. But she also knew better than to fear every door simply because one had once led to fire. So she placed her hand in his. "Asha," she said. And somewhere beneath the waves, the sea remembered how to sing. As always, stay rooted, stay rising, and aligned with all the divine gifts ahead.